There's a moment every narcissist dreads, the moment you stop reacting. When their words no longer wound you, when their approval no longer defines your worth, when the emotional strings they've pulled for so long suddenly fall slack. To them, it feels like death, the death of control. And as Carl Jung understood, when control is threatened, the shadow awakens. Because the narcissist's greatest fear is not losing you, it's losing the version of themselves they created through you. To understand what happens when a narcissist can't control you, we must first understand how they exist psychologically. Jung described the narcissist as someone possessed by their persona, the mask they wear to appear superior, admirable, and powerful. Beneath that mask lies the shadow, the repressed self, full of shame, insecurity, and fear of insignificance. The narcissist cannot face that shadow, so they project it outward. They need others to carry what they cannot bear within. You become their mirror. You are chosen not for who you are, but for how well you reflect their imagined self. At first, they idolize you. They call you brilliant, special, different from everyone else. But what they truly see is their own ideal reflected back. This phase is intoxicating, both for them and for you. Jung would call it inflation, the ego expanding to godlike proportions through identification with the ideal image. But no illusion can last forever. The moment you express independence, boundaries, or self-awareness, the spell begins to break. When a narcissist realizes they can no longer control you, they don't simply walk away. They shift tactics. Control doesn't vanish, it mutates. First comes withdrawal of validation. They withhold affection, attention, or recognition, the emotional currency you've grown accustomed to. Their silence is not absence, it's punishment. They want to trigger self-doubt, to make you chase the connection again. Jung would see this as the trickster archetype in motion, the unconscious need to destabilize others to preserve one's own fragile superiority. If that fails, they move to distortion of reality. They rewrite the narrative to make you doubt your perception. This is what modern psychology calls gaslighting, but Jung would have described it as psychic projection. The narcissist projects their inner chaos onto you and insists it's yours. You're too sensitive, too dramatic, never satisfied. These are not descriptions of you, they are confessions of them. But by convincing you to carry those qualities, they remain untouched by their own darkness. When you begin to resist these tactics, something fascinating happens. Their shadow, the part of them they've spent a lifetime denying, starts to surface. Jung said, "What you resist persists." The narcissist resists shame, insecurity, and inadequacy, so these emotions persist in their unconscious. When they lose control of you, that pressure erupts. But instead of introspection, they externalize it once again. The narcissist cannot integrate the shadow. They must expel it. They do this through smear campaigns. They need a new narrative where you are the villain and they are the victim. By destroying your image, they rebuild their own. This is a psychological defense mechanism, Jung called compensation. The ego overcompensates for inner inferiority by exaggerating power externally. To them, every story they tell about you, every exaggeration, every lie, is not deceit, but survival. The truth would require self-awareness, and that is what they fear most. When a narcissist can't control you, they may also resort to triangulation, introducing a third person, whether real or imagined, to destabilize your sense of importance. They talk about an ex, a friend, or a new admirer, not out of interest, but out of strategy. They need to remind you that attention is conditional, that love, in their world, is a reward for obedience. This taps into one of Jung's deepest insights. Control is the ego's way of avoiding vulnerability. To love freely requires humility. To manipulate is to hide from fear. And the narcissist lives entirely in that fear, terrified of insignificance, terrified of being seen without the mask. But once you stop reacting, something profound happens. You become what Jung called individuated. You separate from the collective emotional pattern the narcissist tries to impose. You begin to see them not as omnipotent, but as wounded, a person possessed by an unintegrated shadow. This realization threatens them more than anything, because if you see them clearly, their illusion of superiority collapses. So they do what the psyche always does when threatened. They regress. Regression is a return to earlier defense patterns: childish rage, silent treatment, or dramatic victimhood. You'll notice extremes: sudden emotional outbursts followed by cold detachment. This is not randomness, it's fragmentation. Jung believed that the narcissist's psyche is fractured between the persona, the perfect self, and the shadow, the rejected self. Losing control forces these parts to collide. What you witness as chaos is their unconscious battling itself. They will accuse you of being cold, ungrateful, disloyal. But what they're really saying is, "You're no longer my mirror." Without your emotional reflection, they face a void. And in that void lies everything they fear: insignificance, emptiness, and the truth that their power was never real. Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But narcissists refuse transformation. They want control, not connection. They want admiration, not authenticity. When the reaction threatens to change them, they retreat to denial. Instead of evolving, they find new mirrors, new people to project upon, new roles to play. The cycle restarts, and the shadow remains buried. Yet, there's something liberating about understanding this pattern. When you stop internalizing their behavior and start seeing it as projection, you reclaim your power. You realize that their rage is not about you. It's their unconscious fighting for dominance. Their coldness is not punishment. It's emptiness disguised as pride. And their need for control is not strength. It's weakness in armor. When a narcissist can't control you, they often turn inward in destructive ways. They may spiral into self-pity, portraying themselves as the victim of your cruelty. They might post vague, dramatic messages or seek sympathy from others. This isn't remorse, it's self-preservation. In Jungian terms, it's a temporary merging with the shadow in the form of martyrdom. They cannot accept fault, so they convert it into suffering. They seek validation for their pain instead of accountability for their actions. If that fails, they escalate to provocation. They might reappear suddenly, through messages, mutual friends, or subtle gestures. Not because they miss you, but because they need to confirm they still matter. They feed not on love, but on emotional energy, positive or negative. Indifference is the only wound they cannot heal from. In Jung's framework, this is the energy exchange of psychic dependency. The narcissist thrives by stealing emotional charge from others because they have none within themselves. But when you stop providing that energy, when your peace becomes their silence, you expose the core truth. A narcissist without control is a narcissist without identity. They must either face their shadow or find a new host. Most choose the latter. They seek new admiration to rebuild their crumbling ego. To them, people are not partners, but mirrors. Once a mirror cracks, it's replaced, not repaired. And yet, the story doesn't end there, because even as they move on, they carry the same unhealed psyche. Jung taught that what is unconscious must repeat itself until it becomes conscious. The narcissist will reenact the same control dynamic again and again, each time losing control faster, until the pain forces awareness or destruction. For you, however, awareness brings freedom. You begin to see that their manipulation wasn't personal. It was archetypal. You were cast in a psychological drama, older than memory. The wounded ego versus the mirror of truth. Once you understand that, compassion replaces anger. You stop trying to win, prove, or explain. You simply observe. And in that observation, you detach. When a narcissist can't control you, they often say you've changed. They call you cold, distant, selfish. But the truth is, you've awakened. You've reclaimed your own center. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that's what terrifies them: your authenticity. Narcissists survive through illusion. Authenticity exposes illusion. Your self-awareness shines light into the darkness they refuse to face. Eventually, they'll look for another mirror. But something inside you has shifted. You no longer need their validation, nor do you fear their rejection. You've integrated the lesson. That control is an illusion, and freedom is internal. You've learned to stand alone without losing empathy. You've become what Jung called the individuated self, whole, balanced, and unreactive. There's an irony here. The more detached you become, the more obsessed they may grow. Narcissists are drawn to the one thing they can't dominate: self-possession. It reminds them of what they lack. They may test your boundaries, appear remorseful, even promise change. But until they face their shadow, nothing truly changes. You'll know this by one simple sign: whether their actions come from awareness or from fear. True remorse accepts responsibility. Manipulative remorse demands forgiveness. What Jung offers us is not just an analysis of the narcissist, but a path to understanding our own role in the dynamic. Why were we drawn to them? Why did we allow control? Why did we confuse intensity with love? The answer lies in our own unconscious, the parts of ourselves that sought recognition, validation, or rescue. The narcissist activates those unhealed parts so we can finally see them. That's the hidden gift beneath the pain. When we integrate that lesson, something remarkable happens. We stop attracting narcissists altogether, because we no longer carry the emotional hooks that feed them. We stop craving validation from the very people who withhold it. We stop mistaking control for care. Our energy changes, quieter, stronger, more centered. And narcissists sense that. They may approach, but they can no longer attach. Their old tactics fail because we've dissolved the pattern. This is what Jung meant when he said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." To reclaim your power, you must face the darker parts of your psyche: the need for approval, the fear of abandonment, the longing to be chosen. When you bring light into those depths, control loses its grip. The narcissist's manipulation no longer finds a place to land. So, when a narcissist can't control you, they will do everything they can to make you doubt your reality, question your worth, and reopen the wound they once fed on. But once you understand the psychology behind it, their behavior becomes transparent. You see not a monster, but a fractured soul lost in its own shadow. That doesn't mean you excuse it. It means you no longer absorb it. Your greatest revenge, as Jung might say, is integration. To live consciously, to act without hatred, to move forward without carrying their darkness as your own. Because when you stop fighting their illusion, you reclaim your reality. When you stop feeding their ego, you feed your soul. And when you stop fearing their control, you finally realize they never truly had it. The power was yours all along. They only borrowed it through your attention. Once you withdraw that energy, their mask crumbles, their drama fades, and their shadow remains, unintegrated, unseen, and seeking another mirror. But not yours. Not anymore. Because you have learned what few ever do, that freedom isn't found in defeating the narcissist, but in understanding them. Awareness ends the game. And that, Jung would say, is how consciousness conquers the shadow.